She was always the same, so full of life and so eager to get into the world. And I say to her, all these fine things she wants to have in the world, what is she prepared to give? Has she thought of it? No. Goodbye, Madame Bonheur.
Au revoir, ma
Look
sœur.
after her. She was always my favorite.
I'll come back and see you again, sister.
We'll be here. Always.
Goodbye.
Salon, madame.
Merci. Excusez-moi, je ne m'attendais pas à trouver quelqu'un ici. Peut-être désirez-vous voir ma mère?
Mademoiselle, enchanté de vous voir. Will Pato. Je suis arrivé à ce moment. J'avais le...
Shall we speak English? We are English, you know. We've lived in France since my father died.
Thank you, chère mademoiselle. My French is very good, but it comes to an end rather quickly.
Mr. Richard Howard?
Madame.
Je suis très heureuse de faire votre connaissance, monsieur.
Enchanté, madame. Je disais que vous...
Mr. Howard prefers to speak English.
This is my stepdaughter, Sarah. Mr. Howard has come, I expect, to talk about the cotton plantations.
You've just come from England?
From Manchester, mademoiselle.
That is England.
The more important part of it. Or so we like to think.
And since lawyers take such a long time in any country, perhaps you would like to stay with us for a few days.
Oh, please do, if you can spare the time from your business in Manchester.
I have a brother who deals with all your routine affairs.
Well, if you really think it would be worth your while, please stay.
It will be worth my while, I'm sure.
This church is 1,000 years old. It was carved out of solid rock.
Is it still used?
Oh, yes, but only once a year.
Bonjour. Is there anything there you like?
May I have that one?
Of course. Merci, madame.
Merci, monsieur. Merci, monsieur.
What does it say? I'm afraid my French isn't up to it.
The symbol of my constancy.
Charming. This is my world. Charm, elegance, savoir-vivre. All the things I like.
You really are a great success, Richard. Everyone admits they had quite the wrong ideas about Englishmen.
Considering the behavior of most Englishmen in France, one can hardly wonder at that.
You've certainly surprised them.
I hope to give them another surprise before the evening's quite over.
You mean about the cotton estates? Is it all settled?
No, not about the estates.
Excusez-moi, monsieur. Il y a là un monsieur qui vous demande.
Qui est-ce?
Je ne sais pas, monsieur, il ne m'a pas donné son nom.
Pardonnez-moi. Save me the next dance, will you say?
Certainement.
Monsieur Howard, voudriez-vous visiter le vignoble à Moton Rothschild?
Pardon.
Please do visit us. The vineyards look so lovely at this time of the year.
Avec plaisir, madame. John, what are you doing here?
I might well ask you the same question. Bring me a glass of water, please.
Pardon, monsieur?
Verto, s'il vous plaît.
Now, why haven't you answered any of my telegrams? Is the deal completed or isn't it? I've had to come all this way to find out.
Now, look here. You sent me here to do a job. Why don't let me do it in my own way?
All right, Richard. There's no need to be awkward.
The deal's complicated, that's all. It needs a little time, a little finesse.
Time? You've had plenty of time. We're getting short of cotton at home, and I'm not going to be caught without supplies.
Well, to begin with, the plantations don't belong to Madame Bonheur. They belong to Sarah.
Sarah? Who's she?
Her stepdaughter. The plantations come to her when she marries.
Well, where is she?
And now look here, John. I've got everything at my fingertips. And I can assure you everything will be settled in a few days if only you'll leave it to me.
Yes, but where's this girl, Sarah?
She's over there with her stepmother.
Right, then I'll have a word with her.
Okay, John, you can't go in there dressed like this. But you realize it's a formal function given in my honor. It's an insult to the hostess. Really, John, have you no manners?
Have you anything else? Madame Bonheur?
Oui, monsieur.
I'm sorry, I don't speak French. Please forgive my dress. I've been traveling all day and I haven't had time to change. I'm Mr. John Howard.
Oh. You are Mr. John Howard?
Yes, head of the firm of Howard Brothers.
You're so young. From Richard's description, we imagined a solemn old man with a long beard.
Richard has a fine imagination, haven't you, Richard? We think a lot of him up in Manchester, what with his piano playing and his amateur dramatics. But when it comes to business, well, I prefer to take care of that myself.
Madame Bonheur, do forgive my brother breaking in like this.
But of course, of course. Mr. Howard, you must be very hungry after your long journey. Sarah.
Thank you very much.
Excuse me.
I'm afraid I don't talk about anything but cotton.
I like listening to you. You remind me very much of my father. You're very ambitious.
Yes, I am. Sarah, do you think you'd like living in England?
I liked it very much when I was a child. But then, of course, I am English. Tell me about the house you and Richard live in.
Oh, we don't live together. Richard has his own house.
Oh.
Sarah, you're not... Are you very fond of Richard?
I like him very much.
More than you like me?
No, John. I find Richard very amusing.
Don't you find me amusing?
No, John, but...
But what?
Well, very...
Yes?
Monsieur Vernier says you may stock your cellar. Any vintage you like as a wedding present to us.
Ça me ferait beaucoup de plaisir.
Well, I don't know anything about vintages, but, well, send us a dozen cases. Anything you like, I'll leave the vintage to you.
You're offered the finest wines in the world, and all you ask for is a dozen cases of anything you like. What a connoisseur. Better stick to your cotton, John.
Please stay, John. Monsieur Vernier is going to open a bottle of wine, the year of your birth. It's customary here when you visit Mouton Rothschild for the first time.
Is it? Well, I'll be back in a minute. Richard! Richard! I've something to say to you, Richard. I've had about enough of your running me down to these people here. You're trying to make a fool of me in front of Sarah, aren't you?
I'm trying to prove that you and Sarah are poles apart. You're a fool if you can't see it, everybody else can.
Oh, she's too good for me, is she?
Well, she's different.
Well, the way I see it, a man who has a business as good as mine is as good as anybody else, and better than some.
Your business. Dad had no right to leave it to you, no right. You know that as well as I do.
Now, let's get down to brass tacks. We've never liked each other, have we, Richard? Once when we were kids, you tied me to the bedpost and beat me. Do you remember? Well, I've never forgotten it. And you've never got the better of me since, have you? And you're not going to now. You can make up your mind to this. I'm marrying Sarah, and there's nothing you can do to stop it.
Nothing that you don't understand. But I shall get it eventually. You know as much about women as you do about wine. Why don't you get them to send you a dozen cases of them, too? The Jane Wharton vintage for preference.
You leave Jane Wharton out of this, Richard, or you'll find yourself out in the street. And that wouldn't suit your pocket or your pride, would it?
Brought you a peace offering.
Well, that's very kind of you, but it's not necessary. We weren't quarreling. This is just English family life.
Oh, dear, I hope not.
I was just telling Richard I'm going to send him to the Far East. We shall be turning out some fine fabrics soon, and, well, I think it would be a good idea if he were to find out how the silkworms work.
Richard, you must drink to us. John, this is your wine, the year of your birth.
Is it?
Not a particularly good year, was it?
Maman, why are you so upset? I should be perfectly all right.
Sister Seraphine was so right. You think only of the excitement, the adventure.
Oh, I don't want to leave you. But it would be lovely to have my own house and home.
But you haven't been to England since you were a child. It will all seem so strange to you.
Oh, at first, perhaps. But then I should be so busy being Mrs. Howard and helping John, I won't have time to be lonely. There's always Richard to turn to. Start to play, Maman.
Ma chérie, tu es ravissante.
Red cheeks. Oh, my goodness. You're hardly dressed for walking out, are you?
How disgusting, madam.
You the new nurse?
Yes, madam. Mr. Howard engaged me yesterday. I miss Bert. He told me to take full charge.
You'll be kind to her, won't you?
The child needs discipline, madam. I understand that last French nurse you had allowed her to run quite wild. Come along, Sally. Hasn't she got a proper name, madam? Oh, madam, the master asked me to tell you that he won't be in tonight after all. He's going to another business dinner, he says.
Sarah, my dear.
Oh, Richard.
I just got back from my last trip. I had to come and see you at once.
Oh, how lovely to see you again.
What have you been doing to yourself? That dress, your hair.
I have changed, haven't I?
Now tell me, what's happened to the gay, charming creature I used to know?
She's not wanted anymore. John prefers me like this, it seems.
Oh, Sarah, how could he?
Oh, Richard, I've tried so hard to make him a good wife, to help him and make him happy. But everything I do seems wrong. The people up here resent me. They still treat me like a foreigner.
You know what they say up here? See a foreigner, heave a brick at him. Sarah, if you're unhappy here, and I can see that you are, why don't you go back to France? Oh, I know you've got a big house here and servants and everything, but there's no charm, no elegance. None of the things you and I both understand.
Leave, John? I couldn't do that. Besides, there's Sally.
Sarah, I'm going to be very frank with you. I can, can't I? I'm your friend, you know that. I tell you, if you go on like this, you'll be nothing but a housekeeper.
Perhaps that's what he wants.
But you mustn't let him, for his sake as well as your own. You must fight to raise him to your level, not descend to his. Don't you see, you must fight him.
But how, Richard?
In every way. Don't let him make a frump of you. Go back to the girl he married. She was unique. Wear beautiful dresses. Give little dinner parties as you did in France. You must stand up for yourself. Don't you see that?
Good night.
Good night, Mrs. Howard.
Good night, Dr.
Wilson. Good night, Mrs. Howard.
Good night, Doctor.
Good night.
What a terrible frock. Indecent. And that dinner. I'm still hungry. Never again.
Well, if the deal goes through, I shall have to drive you fellas even harder at the mill.
Well, we don't mind, Mr. Howard. You drive yourself harder than anyone. Good night. Come along.
Good night, Mr. Howard.
Good night, Mrs.
And you
Wilson.
can thank Mrs. Howard for a very unusual evening.
Good night. Good night.
Good night, Mr. Howard. You must come along to us one evening and have a nice English dinner for a change. Come along, Jerome.
You should learn to laugh at them up here, Mrs. Howard.
There's nothing much to laugh at.
What? The sight of all these people working themselves to an early grave? Making money they'll never enjoy. I laugh all day when I think about it.
Come along, Jerome.
Coming, Mother. I thought your French songs were charming. Good night.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Sarah.
They all hated it. I did everything you told me, Richard. But you see, it's no use.
Well, a fine mess you've made of it with your confounded fads and fancies. These people are important to me, don't you know that? And what do you give them? Cold soup. And you expect them to know that it's meant to be cold. French messes instead of food. And you making an exhibition of yourself in that dress. Things can't go on like this, and they're not going on like this.
No, they're not. Do you know why you married me, John? Because I was young and gay and different from other girls you knew. Now you want me to become drab and dreary and half dead. Why did you marry me? I'm everything you don't want. You don't want a wife. You want a sleeping partner in your business.
Hold your tongue! You do what I say. That's flat, and it's final.
Good night, John.
It's useless to go on, useless. I'm beginning to hate him. You were right, Richard. I must leave him, get a separation. After all, I have my own money.
I know you haven't, Sarah. When you married in such haste, you made an arrangement. All your money's in the business.
You mean if I left him, I'd have nothing?
Except what he allowed you.
I wouldn't touch a penny of it. What could I do? I can't stay here.
You could get a divorce.
Divorce? But I have no grounds for a divorce, Richard.
Oh, come, Sarah.
What do you mean? You meant something.
No, please, I didn't say anything. After all, he is my brother.
Richard, you're the only friend I have. You did mean something. Is there some woman?
Well, it was Jane Wharton, of course, but then you know all about her.
Jane Wharton? Who's she?
He was engaged to her before he met you.
You mean he still sees her?
Oh, yes. But then perhaps people get the wrong ideas.
What wrong ideas?
I mean, you don't know. I always thought you did. Everybody else knows.
Everyone knows. When does he see her?
Perhaps business dinners aren't quite as frequent as you've been led to believe.
Oh. That's dreadful. Dreadful. I suppose everyone's been laughing at me, thinking I knew all about it. I shall get a divorce. I shall go back to France and take Sally with me.
But don't let me persuade you. Why don't you have a talk with my solicitor in London?
How can I get away without John knowing?
I'm going up to London on Friday on business. You can go with me. John will be in Newcastle for 2 nights with Lord Rochford. Please, don't rush headlong into anything without taking very serious thought.
I'm very sorry, Mrs. Howard, but there it is. With the law as it stands today, you haven't sufficient grounds for divorce. You must prove cruelty as well.
Cruelty? Hasn't he already?
Oh, no. Oh, dear, no, no. He'd have to, well, strike you before witnesses. I know it's very difficult, but it's the law, until it's changed.
Changed? When will it be changed?
Oh, never. Never. Goodbye.
Good morning, Mrs. Howard.
Watch your step, lady. There's a loose board there. I warned you, miss, but you came straight on.
Are you all right, Mrs. Howard?
Oh, yes, thank you.
Do you know you cut me dead just now? Didn't you recognize me? Lord Rochford's ne'er-do-well son.
Oh, yes, of course I remember. I'm sorry.
Your parasol?
Oh, thank you.
Might I suggest your hat needs?
Oh.
Let me rattle on whilst you recover yourself. I was on my way up to Old Bonington to try and persuade him to give me another loan. Is John in town?
No.
No? Then let me take you wherever you want to go. Oh, your flowers. Mustn't forget your bunch of daisies.
Thank you. Well, not daisies.
All flowers are daisies to me, unless it's a rose or a violet. No plant's worse than their bite, as my mother always says. I think you'll be much happier if you try to see their point of view.
You're trying to say it's my fault.
No, but you must give and take. Thou gets nowt for nowt, thou knows.
I don't see why you should lecture me, a man of your reputation. I shouldn't be seen about with you at all.
I wish you hadn't said that.
I'm sorry. You've been very kind.
I'd like to be of some help, believe me.
I think you have.
Excuse me, Mr. Howard.
Yes, what is it? Is anything wrong with Sally?
Oh, no, sir. It's this note, sir. It just came. I thought it was from the laundry, so I opened it, but it's for you, sir. I'm very sorry, sir. I think I hear a cab now, sir. It'll be the mistress.
Tell Mrs. Howard to come in here. At once.
Yes, sir. The master wants to speak to you, madam.
Oh, is the master back?
Yes, madam, he is. Oh, madam, he said at once in the drawing room.
Thank you.
Would you like me to come in with him?
No, Richard, I'd rather see him alone.
Suppose you know you've made a laughing stock of me in my own house. I come home and ask where's the mistress, and the servants tell me, oh, Mrs. Howard's gone to London, without so much as by your leave. Now they all know about it. The whole town knows about it by now.
I've been to London to see a lawyer.
Oh, a lawyer? About what?
A divorce.
Divorce? So that's it. You want to make a scandal, do you? You want to ruin me? You can't divorce me.
I know that now.
You knew that before you went to London. You may have seen a lawyer, but that's only a blind. I've just had this letter, and I know what you've been up to. You've been going around with that fella Thorne.
That's ridiculous.
Were you or weren't you?
I met him, yes, but quite by chance. I had no idea he was in London.
Sheer chance, I suppose, that he happened to be at the same lawyer's.
Well, of course it was.
So, Jerome Thorne happened to be there just at that moment. You expect me to believe that?
I don't care if you believe it or not. It's the truth.
Rubbish. And if it were, do you have to let him take you all over London?
What harm is there in that? How can you be so idiotic as to take notice of an anonymous letter?
You don't know what harm gossip can do. You don't care. You may not like it here, but it's my home and my place of business. And because of you, people don't like coming to my house anymore. They feel you laugh at them,
Yes, Jenny?
despise them, and look down on them because they don't dress up in Paris frocks.
Your friends don't like me because I don't wear tweeds and old feathers and look like a molting pheasant.
No, I suppose I'm not good enough for you either, is that it?
Oh, really?
Well, let me tell you this. I will not have my wife sneaking off to London behind my back and going around with men like any common slut.
How dare you? You're hardly the one to moralize.
I know what's right and what's wrong.
I suppose Jane Wharton taught you the difference. You didn't think I knew anything about that, did you? Well, I do.
She has nothing to do with this.
She has everything to do with it. I know all about it now. But I'm going to leave you. I don't care what scandal I make. I won't obey you. I won't!
Get out, Richard. Get out!
Sarah. You have the evidence you need.
Thank you, Richard. I know what I have to do now.
You leave Sarah alone, Richard.
There's a cab for the mistress, sir.
Right.
Put those down. Put them down.
Then let her come as she is. I can't wait. I'll send for other things tomorrow.
Sarah, you understand? If you go alone.
John, what good will that do?
Sally stays here.
Surely the question of the child can be settled later. Come along, Sarah. The cab's waiting.
You can leave the house if you wish, but Sally's not going.
You know I can't leave without her. You're just being cruel. I must take her with me. Come here, baby.
Nurse, take Sally back to bed.
You can't keep her here. She's mine. Mine.
Take her upstairs, Nurse. Sally, go along with Nurse. I'll come and see you presently.
Shocking behavior in front of the child, upsetting her so. Come along, Sally.
I can't. to get your powders. Shall I send for Dr. White?
Sarah, please, I must speak to you. I hit you, Sarah. I didn't think I could ever have done that. I'm trying to say I'm sorry. It's hard for me to say this, Sarah. I know you're only staying on in this house, not because of me, but because of Sally. It's true, isn't it? It's a very bitter thing for me to realize. But because I do love you and want you to be happy, if you want to go and take Sally with you, it's the least I can do.
I don't really want to leave you. We could be happy. We were at first when you weren't so overbearing and thoughtless about me. I'll stay.
I need you so much, Sarah.
I love you too, John. I'll get something to take the blues away. But you must take care of yourself, John. You haven't been at all well lately.
I'm sorry, madam, I can't let you have this unless I know you. Oh, of course, it's Mrs. Howard. I didn't recognize you for a moment. I left to sign the poisons book. Just a formality, you know.
I understand. I want it for my plants in the conservatory.
Oh, yes.
Green fly.
Hello, baby. We've come a little early, Mrs. Howard. I thought that with Mr. John ill, perhaps you wouldn't be going to the concert after all.
Dr. White thinks it's quite all right for me to go, so Mr. Richard will be taking me. Would you like the new dress nurse has made for her?
No. Come along, Sally, dear.
Good night, baby.
Dr. White, how is Mrs. Howard?
Mrs. Howard, it's John I came to see. I'm very worried about that brother of yours, Richard. He drives himself too hard. And everybody else too, I expect. He's been under a great strain. Is he drinking much?
Oh, no. But of course, these domestic troubles don't help. You probably know they had a very serious quarrel last night. He quite lost control of himself. We all feel it would be better if they separated. This kind of thing can't go on, Doctor.
Well, that's got nothing to do with me, Richard. He's been taking far too many of those powders of his. Medicine, he calls them. But I told him that if taken in conjunction with the medicine I'd given him, it would be highly dangerous. However, he's promised me faithfully not to take any more of them. Well, I've given him a sedative, and I'll come in again first thing in the morning. Good night.
Good night. Good evening, Jenny.
Good evening, Mr. Richard.
I told you so, you know. You're burning the candle at both ends. You'll kill yourself.
I'm not dead yet, Richard.
I hope you're not taking too many of those patent powders of yours.
They're the only thing that do me any good.
I know it must be difficult to give up taking them all at once, but I'm sure it's best.
Nonsense. Get me one now, Richard.
You're better without them.
I've got to have it in the collar box, sir. I said get me one. Or do I have to get up and get it for myself?
I still think you oughtn't to have them, you know.
Yes, yes, I know. Only one, Richard. No more.
I'm sorry you can't come to the concert tonight. The Rochford supper afterwards.
Look after Sarah.
Yes, I'll look after Sarah. Now you can keep quiet.
Jenny, has Mr. Richard arrived yet?
He's in the drawing room, ma'am.
Oh, thank you. I'll take him. It's your broth, darling. Try and drink it.
Thank you. You're so pretty, Sarah.
Oh, it's left no mark. I made up a lotion for bruises the nuns taught me when I was a little girl. See? It's gone. And forgotten, isn't it?
Sorry to miss taking you out. I wanted to. But that'll come, won't it?
Must I go, John? I don't want to. I'd much rather stay with you.
Better go. Young Tom Rawdon's playing, and he's Manchester born and bred. You'll enjoy it with Richard. He knows more about music than I do. Besides, Howards must be represented.
All right.
Come back quickly.
I'm very happy.
There's no message yet, Mr. Howard.
Oh, thank you. If anything comes, we'll have it brought at once, please.
I'll ask the attendant to let you know the moment anything arrives.
Thank you.
Are you expecting something?
No, but I think it's best I should know where we are.
Mr. Richard.
Who wants me?
Mrs. John. By, he's a grand pianist for a local lad, isn't he?
Yeah, I think he'll get on.
Yes, he's very talented. Excuse me.
He's no call to be so short. He's not like our Mr. John.
Is that for me, Mr. Richard Howard?
Nay, I'm looking for Mr. Emmett, sir. Oh, Richard, I was very sorry to hear about John. When I heard the news, I was quite upset.
News? What news?
That he isn't here tonight. It must be very bad for him to stay away.
Good evening, Mrs. Howard.
Good evening.
You'll forgive my saying so. I always admire your dresses. And I like those roses in your hair.
You're very observant, considering all flowers are daisies to you. I hear you're going abroad. Is it true?
Yes. I think it's better to get away from here.
It's very sudden, isn't it?
Well, it's about time I did a job of work. I'm going to Canada to ranch there.
I'm sorry you're leaving.
Well, I shall miss my friends, of course. And if I may say so, you in particular.
Oh, they'll soon forget all about us.
Mrs. Howard, will you come to the boat and say goodbye? Oh, all my family will be there. It'll be quite respectable.
Of course I will. It depends on how John is. He hasn't been very well lately. I'll come if I can. If only to throw some daisies at you. Whatever's the matter with you? Have you been drinking? If you attach so much importance to this brooch, I think you'd better have it back. You know I love John. I always have, I always will.
No, you can't.
Mrs. Howard, oh, Mrs. Howard, will you come quickly? There's been a message. Your husband's very ill.
How is my brother?
The doctor's with him now, sir.
How is he?
It's over.
Over?
Oh, please, don't misunderstand me. I mean, the immediate crisis is over.
You gave her quite a shock.
I'm afraid there's not a great deal of hope for your brother, Richard.
What's the cause of the attack? Has he said anything?
No, I haven't allowed him to talk. It's something he's taken, or been given, some acute irritant that's caused this relapse. I'm very worried about it.
Then you suspect?
I suspect nothing. But I'm taking every precaution. I'm sending round a nurse to take complete charge of the patient. I think that's the best thing for everybody. Good night, Richard.
Good night. Good evening, ladies.
Oh, Mr. Richard, I'm glad you've come. 'Tis a sad time. And after brewing my 5th cup of tea, will you be taking a cup? Come yourself up, girl.
Well, this is bad news about the master. So sudden, wasn't it? He must have taken something, obviously. Sit down. Can you account for it, cook?
No, sir.
No, of course you can't. Never had anything to eat, had he?
Only the broth, sir. That's all he had.
But you prepared that yourself, didn't you?
There's nothing bad leaves my kitchen.
Well, of course not. And who took it up to him?
I did.
You did, Jenny. Did you give it to him yourself?
No, sir. The mistress took it from me at the door. I never give him nothing.
Oh, Mrs. Howard took it from him. And naturally, there's nothing wrong with that. Did you see her give it to him?
No, sir. I didn't go in.
There was nothing in her hand, I suppose.
In her hand? What could there be in her hand, Mr. Richard?
Nothing that could have got mixed up with the soup, by accident, of course.
I don't think so, sir.
Well, of course not. That's absurd. And what do you know about all this?
I don't think the mistress has done anything wrong, sir.
Thank you, Mrs. Cobb. Well, for your own sakes, I advise you to be very careful. Mrs. Carby should prepare everything yourself. Generally, you take it up and make quite sure that Mr. John gets it himself, no one else. Then we can be quite sure that everything's all right, can't we? Good night.
Good night, sir.
Oh, by the way, there's one thing I've got to tell you. Dr. White has arranged for a trained nurse to take complete charge of the patient, just as a precaution.
I couldn't help giving the mistress the tray. She took it from me.
Did she have anything in her hand?
No. There might have been something, even if I didn't see it.
I'm sure there wasn't.
Oh, you're always sticking up for her with your bits of French and your fancy talk. Trying to imitate your betters, that's you.
Come to think of it, when I went into her room tonight, she was mixing something in a bowl. When she saw me, she covered it over, like that, hiding it.
Fancy. But surely, Mrs. Cobb, it's much easier for me to make the master's broth on the little stove in his room.
No, madam, I don't want you to come into my kitchen. I know what Mr. John likes, and if he hasn't been getting it these years, it's not my fault.
You'll have to speak to Nurse Brand, madam. She's in charge now.
I am in charge here, and I say that the patient shall not be disturbed.
Dr. White, she won't let me to see my husband. What does it mean?
Nurse Brand knows her business, Mrs. Howard.
But
She's acting in the best interests of the patient, believe me. You may encounter a certain amount of resentment. I'm sorry, but it can't be helped. It's most important that the patient should be watched all the time.
Yes, Doctor. I understand perfectly.
I'm afraid there's not much hope, nurse. I've called in 2 specialists. I must have another opinion. There are certain aspects in this case that make me very uneasy.
John, what are you doing? What do you want? I'll get it for you.
I'm feeling so weak. Get me one of my powders.
No, John, the doctor said you mustn't have them. You know they're dangerous, especially now when you're so ill.
But, Master, the only thing that helps. You want me to get well, don't you?
Well, of course, my darling.
And get me one quickly in the collar box. It'll stop this pain.
I can't, John. Let me call the doctor.
No. You must get it quickly. Please, Sarah. Please.
But I don't know what's in them. They may do you some harm.
Please, Sarah. Please.
All right. I'll mix it with your barley water.
Rinse it out.
Now you must try and rest. When you wake up, you must be well again.
Oh, Mr. Richard. Stay and play with Dolly, dear. I wanted to speak to you about this. It wasn't properly sealed up, and knowing what I know, I thought it my duty to show it to you.
You shouldn't open other people's letters, you know.
Did she? Well, did she? Oh, Mr. Richard, Mrs. Howard has gone into his room. Did she give him anything?
No.
Tell me the truth. Did she give him anything?
No,
Tell
no.
me. You're lying, I know it. Did she give him anything?
Yes, yes, something in a glass. But I'm sure there's nothing wrong.
There. I knew it. I've sent for Dr. White.
There's something dreadful going on in this house, Mr. Richard. I don't know what it is, but I feel it in my bones. I'm sure of it.
We mustn't jump to conclusions.
What have you got there, Jenny?
Flowers, Miss Burt.
Flowers at a time like this. From that Mr. Thorne, I shouldn't be surprised.
Take them up to Mrs. Howard's room, will you, Jenny?
Yes, Mr. Richard.
Mr. Richard. Oh, Mr. Richard. He is much, much worse. I must tell Dr. White to hurry.
I'll stay with him till the doctor comes.
Come closer, Richard. You'll soon be rid of me. What are you smiling at? You've hated me, haven't you? There were times when you could have murdered me, weren't there? That nurse tries to keep Sarah out. Why?
They think you must have taken something.
Poison. She let you in. Why not Sarah? Better get rid of those powders of mine. We don't want any mistakes made, do we, Richard?
How many are there? 2. 3.
Show me there are 3 left.
I'll destroy them, don't you worry.
Show me 3.
Sarah! Sarah! Sarah!
All right, Richard. You needn't do it twice. You've got me tied to the bed first again, haven't you?
I've had to do it, John. All your life you got exactly what you wanted. You got the business, you got Sarah. I've had to bide my time. We know how to wait up north, don't we? Now I'll get what I want. I'll get the business, I'll get Sarah. As I want her, you understand? You're dying, John, so you might as well know. They think that Sarah poisoned you. Shut down, I've told you, listen. They'll come for Sarah. She'll suffer, she should suffer. She'll find out which one of us she should have married. But she won't hang. I'll see to that, I'll save her. And I shall have her at my feet. Grateful, humble, willing.
Sarah, at your feet. Not this side of eternity.
you sent for the doctor at once, please?
Jenny's gone already, Mr. Richard.
I'm afraid the worst has happened, my brother.
Oh, no, sir.
Better find Mrs. Howard at once. I think she's in the nursery.
I knew it. I knew it. She shan't be left alone with that poor child.
Give me that child. Lizzie, Bert. What's the matter? What's happened?
You should know.
Sarah? Sarah? Sarah, I've got some bad news for you.
What is it?
Your husband is dead, Mrs. Howard.
Can't be. I only left him a moment ago.
We know that, Mrs. Howard. No one can go into the room until it's been investigated by the authorities.
Investigated? I don't know what you're talking about. What's doing?
Must be calm, my dear. Come, let me take you to your room.
John! Why are they all staring at me like that? What have I done? What have I done?
Don't excite yourself, my dear. There must be some misunderstanding. Little things upset people, such as your receiving flowers from a comparative stranger at such a time.
But my husband's dead. Don't they understand? John's dead. All they can think of is someone sending me a bunch of daisies.
Sarah, Sarah, my dear. Now, we mustn't let our feelings run away with us, must we? Jenny, you say you saw Mrs. Hart take the master's soup in.
Yes, Mr. Richard.
Wasn't that a natural thing to do?
Yes, Mr. Richard.
Tweenie, you saw something put into the barley water. But what? It could have been sugar, couldn't it?
Yes, yes, that's what I said.
Mrs. Garner, all of you. You know Mrs. Hart for several years. You ever known her to do anything bad, anything cruel? She wouldn't do it, would she?
Well, I don't think so, sir.
But flowers from a man and her husband dying.
A gentleman sends Mrs. Hart a box of flowers. Could he know that her husband was dying? Could she refuse to receive the flowers? No, no, my friend.
That'll be the doctor and the police surgeon.
Police?
Yes, I sent for them.
You better let them in, Mary.
Sandwiches for the journey, madam.
Take care of my baby. See she has everything she wants.
Yes, madam.
Silence in court! All persons who have anything to do before my lords the King's justices, draw near and give your attendance. God save the King!
Put up Sarah Marguerite Howard.
Sarah Marguerite Howard. Silence in court!
Sarah Marguerite Howard, is that your name?
Yes.
The indictment charges you that on the 3rd day of September of this year, at the Lodge, Manchester, in the county of Lancaster, you murdered John Howard. How saith you, Sarah Marguerite Howard? Are you guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
Mrs. Howard, would you please get to the witness box?
Silence in court!
Your witness, Sir William.
Mrs. Howard, you said this morning that on the night your husband died, you and he were completely reconciled. Am I right?
Yes, that's quite correct.
I see. But there had been a good deal of friction up to the day before his death.
Yes, there had.
And then, quite suddenly, you became a devoted wife and loved him very dearly. You asked the jury to believe that?
Yes, it's true.
Nevertheless, on the 18th of September, you visited a firm of solicitors in London seeking advice about a divorce.
Yes. We were reconciled after that visit.
But you had arranged to meet Mr. Thorne.
No, I met him quite by accident.
Very well. You met in romantic circumstances, shall we say.
I fell down some stairs. Mr. Thorne happened to be there and came to my assistance. Do you call that romantic?
Subsequently, you and your husband quarreled. He struck you in the face.
Yes.
Was it on account of your visit to London, or was it because of your meeting with Mr. Thorne?
On account of my visit to London.
Nevertheless, the witness, Mrs. Fisher, said...
I saw Mrs. Howard and Mr. Thorne in London together. And I thought it was my duty to tell Mr. Howard about it.
So it seems your husband knew of your meeting with Mr. Thorne.
Yes.
Thank you. And then, after this violent quarrel, you went to a chemist, unsuccessfully hiding your identity, and purchased 2 ounces of arsenic.
Yes. I bought it for a lotion to take away the bruise on my face. I was going out that night.
The witness, Mr. McGruber, the chemist.
She said it was for green fly on the plants in the conservatory.
Did you, in actual fact, Mrs. Howard, have green fly on the plants?
No. I just said that. I didn't want him to know why I was buying it.
I see. This lotion was made up for a perfectly innocent purpose.
Of course.
On that Thursday night, you went to your husband's room. You were dressed to go to the concert. At the moment of your approaching the doorway...
She took the bowl of broth from me and went into the master's room. She had something in her other hand.
Could it possibly have been the bottle of lotion you had in your other hand?
No.
Nor the packages from the chemist from which this lotion was made up?
No, I only had my evening bag.
I see. So you gave your husband the broth, said good night, no doubt, kissed him perhaps, and then left him to go out and enjoy yourself.
I wanted to stay with my husband. He insisted upon my going. I didn't want to go at all.
Oh, even though Mr. Thorne was going to be there?
I did not know that.
But you met him, you laughed and talked with him. Meanwhile, your husband was dying.
How could I have known?
That's exactly what we're here to find out. Your husband was, in fact, desperately ill. Yet the very next day, you were writing to this gentleman you'd met casually once or twice, as far as we know. Would you hand this to the witness? Is that letter in your own handwriting, Mrs. Howard?
Yes.
Let me see that letter.
Heartbroken. I couldn't get away. John is much worse. It's hopeless. I can't leave him now, Sarah. You wrote that.
Yes?
You were broken-hearted?
Of course not.
Oh, but your husband was dying.
No, he was extremely ill.
Then why did you say hopeless?
Did I say that? I think I meant I mean, hopeless to think of seeing Mr. Thorne. He was going abroad.
You weren't perhaps preparing your lover for the news that you'd soon be free?
No. He was not my lover.
Then why, may I ask, did you use these extravagant terms?
I don't know. I wrote the letter in a hurry and under great strain. I wasn't thinking of double meanings.
I can't leave him now. When did you expect to leave him?
Oh, never.
But you had recently tried to leave your husband's house.
Yes.
And you are the loving mother, the devoted wife. Now, Mrs. Hard, you were asked, for very good reasons, no doubt, to keep away from your husband's room. Taking advantage of the nurse's absence, you went in. And what do we find?
I saw her. She took the powders out of the box and stirred one into the barley water. Then she looked round at him. Ever so artful, not like her at all. I know she didn't do anything wrong. She was kind to me.
But it wasn't like that. My husband begged me to give him a powder. I didn't want to upset him, so I only pretended to give it to him. None of it went into the glass.
You immediately rinsed out the glass?
Yes, because he asked me to.
So that no powder was found in the glass. Considerable traces were, however, found. In your pocket, on your handkerchief.
Yes, because I poured the powder into my handkerchief and put it into my pocket.
In the collar box in your husband's bedroom. In the drawer of a desk downstairs. In a box of flowers, Mrs. Hard, in your bedroom. How do you account for all that?
I don't know. I don't know. My husband kept his powders in odd places. But
the flowers were brought into the house 1 hour before he died. You don't suggest, Mrs. Hard, that he could have placed the powders there?
Well, of course not. I can't understand it. I never even opened the box. I heard my child crying. I put it down, and I went to her. I never even lifted the lid. From that moment onward, I never thought about it.
Until after he died.
I wasn't thinking of boxes of flowers then.
Except as a receptacle to conceal something.
I had nothing to conceal. I never at any time lifted the lid of that box.
Then, Mrs. Howard, how do you account for the poison being found there?
I don't know. I don't know how anything could have happened. Everything I said, everything I did without thinking, you've twisted out of shape. Distorted beyond all reason. I tell you, I love my husband. For the first time in years, we thought we were going to be happy. And now I'm a bad wife. A light woman. A murderess. I'm not. I'm Sarah. It's Sarah Howard. Everyone knows me. They know I wouldn't do it. They know I couldn't do it.
Sir William, I think this would be a convenient moment to adjourn. We will therefore resume tomorrow at 10 o'clock.
Then we are to understand, Mr. Thorne, that your meeting with the accused in London was accidental.
Yes.
It was not an assignation.
No.
But nevertheless, you spent a considerable time in the company of a married woman whom you say was only an acquaintance. You met her at the theater the following evening. The day after that, you sent her flowers. Is that correct?
Yes.
Mr. Thorne, there is one quite simple question I should like to ask you. When you met the accused in London, were you in love with her?
Don't answer that. My lord, how is this relevant? Proceed, Mr. Attorney.
Very well. If my learned friend objects, let me put another question. You suddenly decided, after your meeting with the accused in London, to go to Canada. Is that correct?
Yes.
Might I ask if you made that decision because of your feelings for the accused?
Yes.
Mr. Thorne, are you in love with the accused now? Mr. Thorne, I asked you a question. Remember, you are on oath. Are you in love with the accused now?
I be giving my evidence today, Mr. Burton?
No, but you'll be called tomorrow morning, Mr. Howard. Has Sir Jonathan seen you?
No, but I saw him. Good morning, Lord Rochford. How's the case proceeding?
Richard, if you have any evidence that will help her, for heaven's sake, let us know.
Haven't you done enough harm already? You're gadding about with her in London, and your boxes of flowers. Why not leave it in capable hands?
Yours, I suppose?
Yes, mine.
Endeavour, if you please, Mr. Howard, to answer the questions without embroidery.
Please answer the question.
You ask a jury to give a verdict which concerns the life of a woman. And you base it upon the histrionic ability of a tweenie. You allowed her to demonstrate what she saw. Why may not I interpret it in my own way?
You have asked the question, Mr. Attorney, and I think we must allow the witness to answer it in his own way. If he fancies himself histrionically, as he evidently does.
Thank you, my lord. The little tweenie, it seems, saw the mistress of the house putting something into a glass. The lady, she said, looked artfully over her shoulder, like this. That seems to be as highly colored as the periodical she probably read. Could it not have been a glance over her shoulder like that? Merely a harmless glance.
Mr. Attorney, where is this leading? I don't feel we're getting anywhere. I'm quite sure you feel the same.
One more question, my lord. And if I can only get a plain answer, I shall have done. Now, this is a very serious question.
I'm glad.
Packets of poison were found in a certain box of flowers. All we want to know is how these packets came into that box.
Sir, to say merely that I cannot account for it would be utterly misleading. I can't account for it any more than I can account for the cobweb of suspicion that entangles the accused. A bowl of soup, a glass rinsed out, a scribbled note, little everyday things, and all of a sudden the soup becomes lethal. The glass held poisoned drugs. The note is to a lover.
Please, will you answer my question?
No, sir! I will not answer your question so as to mislead the jury, which is what you want. I will tell the truth. This woman bickers with her husband over petty things, and here it is magnified until she becomes a cruel, unscrupulous woman, plotting to murder him for her lover's sake. And then, how does this cunning, determined murderess set about this supposed crime?
Will you please answer my question?
Is she satisfied with the huge amount of poison already in my poor brother's possession? Oh, no. Absurdly disguised, she goes off to a shop where she will say she's well known and buys a little more.
My lord, I protest. This witness
And then,
will not...
having deliberately sown suspicion on herself, does she carefully try to hide it? Oh, no. She makes lotions of it, leaves it on her dressing table. She spreads it everywhere, in her pockets, on her handkerchiefs, anywhere. In fact, it could not have been worse concealed had she marched out onto the landing with a 10-gallon can of it on her head, labeled poison!
Silence in court! Silence in court!
Now, you're embroidering again. I've warned you already.
And the true reason is the one which must now be obvious to the jury. There was nothing to conceal. There was no real ill feeling. There was no love.
Please, you must not make speeches. This is contempt of court. Stand down.
You are basing this whole vile accusation on what Mrs. Howard herself described to me on the very day that her husband died
I
as
said
a bunch
stand
of daisies.
down.
And a bunch of daisies may make a daisy chain, but it will not, it cannot, it must not make a chain of evidence. I apologize, my lord. I was carried away by my absolute conviction of the woman's innocence. My deepest regrets.
Mr. Howard, I make all allowances in the case of witnesses under emotional stress, but this behavior of yours is without precedent. You have laid yourself open to a heavy fine for contempt of court.
I'm sorry, my lord.
Mrs. Hard, will you please go back to the witness box?
It'll soon be over now. We'll be away by 5 o'clock.
Well, there's just one point I seek to establish, Mrs. Hard. I merely seek confirmation. This box of flowers in which the poison was found, I understand you to declare you didn't know what flowers were inside the box.
I had no idea.
No, of course not. You couldn't. You hadn't opened it, nor even lifted the lid.
No.
Now, Mrs. Howard, the witness, Mr. Richard Howard, has sworn that on that very evening, just after the death of your husband, you referred to a box of daisies. Did you say that?
I think I said a bunch of daisies.
We all know that that box contained marguerites and 2 large bunches of common daisies. I suggest you knew what flowers were inside because you had opened that box, and therefore you did hide the poison there.
I don't understand. I only use the expression, a bunch of daisies, meaning flowers, because Mr. Thorne always used it. He always said bunch of daisies, meaning flowers, any flowers.
Gentlemen of the jury, have you agreed upon your verdict?
We have.
Do you find the prisoner guilty or not guilty of murder?
Guilty.
And that is the verdict of you all?
Yes.
Sarah Marguerite Howard, you have been found guilty of murder.
No! It's not true! Sarah! No! No, it's not true! No! Don't you see, you fool? She must be innocent! She's innocent! No! She's innocent, I tell you! Let me go! Everything. I've got nothing more to do with them. It's finished. I had them in the hollow of my hands. The blind fools, the idiots. I saved her once. I can't save her again. I'll wash my hands of the whole affair.
It may be finished for us, sir, but it's not finished for poor Mrs. Howard.
Quiet. Quiet. I forbid you to speak, Mrs. Howard. From now on, I've only one idea. My business. I've got power now. Great changes. Great developments now that I've got the power, Albert.
You mustn't worry about little Sally, Mrs. Howard. She's safely in France, in the convent there. Sister Seraphine has arranged everything.
If I die, I'd like her to stay there.
Please don't talk like that, Mrs. Howard. You're not going to die. We're fighting hard for you. There's your appeal to be heard yet. I'm sure the court will quash your sentence. We all know you're innocent.
How can you know? Only 2 people in the world can know I'm innocent. Myself, one other. There is one person who could possibly have wanted to kill John.
Richard!
Your time is up.
Now look here. Why do you follow me about day after day like a shadow? What do you hope to gain by this ridiculous behavior?
Richard, the appeal's dismissed. Don't you realize what that means? Now there's no hope left, except in you.
Why in me?
Because you're so clever, Richard. We all rely on you now. That day in court when you cried out, she's innocent. Do you know what I thought? I felt you knew who was guilty.
Nonsense. I believe you're innocent. Nobody else did who wasn't a fool.
Then who could it have been, Richard? There were only the servants in the house, and you.
You'll stay next that I poisoned John. No, my dear fellow, there's nothing more can be done. The Home Secretary, of course, but I'm quite sure that he'll take action. Good night.
Ever since she was arrested, you've told everybody that you'd save Sarah. Well, you failed.
I have not failed. I never fail. Oh, Albert. How did you get in here? Albert has orders to admit no one.
Packing? Sarah's under sentence of death, and you think you can just pack up and go away?
Will you stop interfering with my affairs? Get out of here, will you?
I'll get out, Richard, in a moment. You gave this brooch to Sarah, didn't you?
Yes.
I found it on the floor of the box the night of the concert. I think you better have it back. You loved her then, Richard. You can't let her die now.
Please get out of here, will you? Stop pestering me. I want peace. I want to be alone, don't you understand?
Sarah wants to see you, Richard.
Sarah? That's impossible. What more can I do now?
Why won't you see her, Richard? I'll tell you why. Because you're trying to escape from reality. You're trying to run away from it now, Richard, but you can't, you know. Sarah's going to die. They're going to put a noose round her neck. She's going to hang until she's dead. You can't run away from that, Richard.
Well, what do you expect me to do? What more can I do?
Tell us who poisoned John.
How do I know? Perhaps John reached from the bed and got the powders himself. Yes, that's it. That's what happened. Just a miscarriage of justice.
Do you think he could do it himself?
Yes, of course it's possible. If you can prove that, then you can save her at the last moment.
You must never forget that if you have faith, you need have no fear of death.
Oh, sister, I'm not frightened. I don't want to die. I want to live. I've done nothing wrong. Why should I die?
You must accept the will of God, my child, and then you'll find peace. But the one who is guilty will suffer the endless torture of his conscience.
I hope he suffers 100 times what I'm suffering now.
Sarah, my child, look at me. You are innocent of this crime, aren't you?
Yes.
I know it. But in your heart, you must be innocent of all sin, all hatred, all revenge too. You must forgive.
I can't. I can't forgive him. I can't forgive him.
Now move along, then, move along. There's not to keep golfing at. Here, you. Oh. In, Mr. Howard.
It's no good, Richard. John couldn't have reached the powders from here. Somebody else must have given them to him.
But you haven't any proof. Nobody's got any proof.
You gave him the powders. You poisoned him.
All my life, people have been against me. Nobody's trying to live who says anything against me.
Police! Police!
Tell the truth. You murdered him, didn't you? Tell the truth. You killed your brother. Here, in this very room, on this very bed, on this very pillow. Tell the truth.
All right. All right. I killed my brother because I love Sarah. I never loved anyone before. I killed my brother because I loved Sarah. Put that down in your book. Now Sarah can live. I always said I'd save her. And